there is no denying.
Tell me where he is.
Our world has faced no greater threat than it does today.
Go! My name is Matthew Price. You may not recognize me. You may recognize my voice from the fabulous podcast MAMO. What's going to be happening is these two gentlemen are going to be debating the relative merits of the Harry Potter franchise of films and films alone. So the idea will be that on my left, Matt Brown, also of MAMO, but there is absolutely no bias on the right, Mike from the Substream, correct, will be arguing the pros and cons of the Harry Potter film franchise, whether that film franchise is in fact of any kind of lasting quality, whether it will stand the test of time.
Maybe get undercover before someone murders them.
That way they won't know which Harry Potter is the real one.
Let's go to the first opening statement. We're going to start with Mike. Go!
Thank you very much for joining me here for this debate. My position is fundamentally this. The Harry Potter movies is crappy, except said fancy and convincing. Furthermore, that they're fundamentally a disposable, pointless series of adaptations of an incredibly popular book series that are popular, incredibly popular, billions of dollars, each one grossing almost $1 billion in fact, but popular in the same way that tulips were popular in Holland at the height of tulip mania, or the way that lead pipe plumbing was popular in Rome before everyone went crazy and shat themselves to death. It is my position that they are bad movies and not enjoyable.
And go!
I take a contrary view. I think the films were part of sort of the birth of the new fantasy movement in film. There's been one before, but the one that we're in right now, Harry Potter, was a foundational entry in that. And I think that regardless of whatever phenomenon surrounds them right now, there's a level of craftsmanship just in the film craft that is actually going to stand the test of time. If you look at them as movies, they're exceptionally well-made movies. And they're also a project unlike kind of anything in cinema, just because of the reach of the things. The size of the franchise, the size of the cast, watching these kids grow up over 10 years and having that be part of the storytelling. I think it makes it meaningful in a way that really no other film franchise has been. It doesn't make it the best of all time, but it makes it a significant entry in the genre.
I'm gonna lose.
I must be the one to kill Harry Potter.
I'm going to, I guess, ask you both this series of questions. So, Mike.
Yes.
I guess I don't want to paraphrase you. You feel they're disposable. What makes them disposable? Is it the filmmaking, or is it the stories themselves?
I would argue that it's a combination of both. Put them in the context of the 100-year history of filmmaking as a series of films, not as a series of things pertaining to books.
Yeah.
The only series that's not guided in any way by one single unifying vision. There are interchangeable directors, the majority of whom are people like Christopher Columbus. I think that it's a series of films designed to make money and little else.
Accepting the point that the directorial authorship is not the priority of the series.
Yes.
Do you feel that in some way negates its value? Or is it a strength?
No, I do think it's a strength. Kind of a weak analogy would be the Alien movies, because that's another series where the directorial vision is not maintained through the series, but I mean, at least as far as I'm concerned, each one of the original four at least has some merit as a directed project. So I have no problem with revolving directors. I don't think that inherently creates a weakness in the franchise.
Do you feel that's a fair analogy given how distinct the four Alien films are?
I think that it's unfair in that the four directors that directed the four Alien films are each directors who are known for having distinct visions. However, I do think that it's a great comparison, the two franchises, because the Harry Potter films, like the four Aliens films, when you sit down and watch them all, you can get to the end of them like I did at the end of Alien 4 or the end of the last Harry Potter movie and realize I have no idea actually what's happening.
They are coming. They are coming.
Question period is over. We're going to get to the round of this. I think since you made the last one, I'm going to let Mike start. So, as soon as you get boring, I'm going to stop.
Okay.
All right. And go.
The thing that I hate the most about the Harry Potter films is that I've seen 10 plus hours of cinema at this point, and I cannot remember a single remarkable, memorable scene from any of them.
Sort of depends on what you want to drill down to. I kind of tend to remember the more memorable of the movies, like what's like the Prisoner of Azkaban and Half-Blood Prince, the ones that sort of stand out as complete pieces that would work as movies, even divorced from the franchise as a whole.
There's too many people in them that have way too confusing backstory. Everyone that watches these movies watches them because they like the books and they're watching some kind of goofy adaptation of a book that they happen to love. The movies do not have enough story in them to exist as just movies.
The third one really is a standalone story. It's about this thing that happened with Harry one time. The sixth one is kind of a detour in the overall story. It steps out of the storyline for a second and just sort of tells its own little thing about what it's like to be a teenager at Hogwarts. Especially in the movie, actually even more so than in the book.
They have to exist in a context. That's why they make so much money, because they have the HP part of them. You can't just say they stand on their own. It's like saying Star Wars, the original 3 films, would have been a better series if there had been an interim film between 2 and 3 that explored Luke in a forest and what he was feeling.
You just outlined the very essence of the problem, which Star Wars 3 films, it's a much shorter story. 7 films were allowed to go into a much longer and more complex arc, and there can be those little detours. It's more like a mini-series or a season of a show.
And is part of your problem the fact that they're designed to make money? Does that in and of itself make them bad?
No, every film's designed to make money. But there is a certain level of artifice that Hollywood can construct that says, hey, this isn't just about money, this is about entertainment. And that level of artifice is not here with these films. This is a mercenary exercise in maximizing profit at the expense of originality and taste.
And what are the memorable scenes and moments?
Dragon fight in the 4th film, the time travel thing in the 3rd film. There's a lot of stuff in the 5th movie just about like them learning their little wizard school, like sub-school rebellion army. You know, I'm a sucker for any of the angst moments. When Hermione yanks off her shoes at the Yule Ball and sits on the stairs and cries, I'm like, I've seen that in real life.
Help me!
I really feel strongly both of you did an admirable job of communicating your basic position here. So we're going to go on to final statements. These are closing statements. Since we began with Mike the first time, we're going to let Mike hit clean up. And Mr. Brown, you're gonna start.
Yeah.
Go!
Okay, I just want to return to what I said about there's no other project like this in films. There's been one major change in the cast, unfortunately, which is Dumbledore because of Richard Harris, but otherwise we've got to watch all these people, most of whom are children, grow up over 10 years, and that actually informs the story. This is a massive story about growing up, and that's why I think it will always be relevant, because those kinds of things always will be relevant. We're not going to come to a time when kids aren't going to need to know how to grow into moral adults. That's part of life. So, I think you're damn wrong.
Mike, your turn. Go!
You're right that it's an interesting project that has happened over 10 years. Unfortunately, it's been 10 years exploring 7 years in the lives of characters that started out when they were 12 or 13, which is an interesting project in that it was a book about 12-year-olds written for 12-year-olds, and then a book about 14-year-olds written for 14-year-olds, and so on and so on and so on. And the movies, unfortunately, don't match that pace. So now we're in a position where we're watching 21 and 22-year-olds acting like 17-year-olds who don't actually exist, because every 17-year-old in the world smokes weed and has sex, not run around in the forest drinking butterbeer.
It's now up to you, the viewer, to decide who is correct. As always, I am Matthew Price, and myself and Matthew Brown can be found online at www.row3.com, where our podcast MAMO is available for instantaneous download.
And we'll be about Harry Potter next week.
This has been the great Harry Potter debate of 2010.